Good day once again. This is MULASE, Director of Business and Program Development, Aviation Graduate School. During our last episode in Aviation Business, post-COVID-19 questions and answers, I told you that I'll be sharing with you what's the future of African airlines post-COVID-19. And this is one question I've received quite a lot from my clients. And I need to say that yes, that's the reason I'm recording this clip today. And I'll be very brief. Like I told you, I'll always take between 5 to 15 minutes in each and every clip I take. So today, in responding to that question, actually I'll focus on quite a number of factors that will help us understand the future of African airlines, more especially post-COVID. And some of these factors I'm going to discuss in relation to the future of African airlines post-COVID-19 is passenger load factor, and I'll also be looking at oligopolistic market structure of airline. I'll also be looking at airline financing, and I'm also going to be sharing about open sky treaties. And obviously the last one today, which is the fifth point I'll be looking at, is the airline scheduling or scheduling. Now, I wanted to say that airline industry is facing unprecedented international crisis that may erase out quite a number. Revenue passenger miles and cargo ton miles has declined by more than 90%, and losses have actually soared to the record levels. Even after COVID-19 is contained, I want to say that airlines will experience low recovery because of spending on air travel is actually discretionary. Now, people have to be working again, and the economy has to be well on the way to recovery before spending on air travel starts to pick up momentum. And obviously, this may take anywhere from 8 to 12, from 8 or let me say 12 to 18, even 24 months after the recovery is well underway. I want to say that during such moments, from now, even just immediately also post-COVID-19, carriers actually find themselves in substantial excess capacity. Unlike manufacturing industry, carriers cannot inventory goods or cut stock production until the economy actually improves. Interest payment to creditors on outstanding debts, primarily flight equipment, must be paid, and facilities that were geared to handle pre-recession volumes cannot be closed. This is basically what's going to happen. And although airlines can follow certain volume-related employees, they must carefully consider this move, because the extensive retraining costs involved when personnel are brought back as volume increases are actually unbearable. Now, having said that, I want to now go straight to the 5 points I'll be focusing on in discussing the future of African airlines post-COVID-19. And the first point is revenue passenger load factor. I would say that airlines have one major concern: revenue passenger load factor. This figure expresses the relationship between available seat miles and revenue passenger miles realized. And actually, when there is high load factor, this obviously is influenced by traffic growth, and capacity limitation agreements allows the allocation of cost. For instance, the cost that comes with operating aircrafts over a large number of passengers, resulting in lower cost per passenger, which allows for lower fares. Now, this may not be the case during and immediately after life goes back to normal. Many airlines we know have already cut up to 90% of flight capacity, and they may experience low load factor. Actually, this will increase the cost of operating aircrafts and also increase the cost per passenger. Now, this will result in closure of quite a number of airlines, more especially where many aircrafts are operated on lease. This is because actually airlines will not be able to afford the costs that come with leasing aircraft in times when traffic is way below the curve. Now, the second point obviously I'll look at today is oligopolistic market structure of airline industry. I would say that airline industry is characterized by very few service providers offering similar products with a high obstacle entry. And I need to say that when you talk of oligopolistic market structure, obviously these are markets which have very few service providers, and obviously they're characterized by, for example, enjoying the economies of scale, most of them through merger, through mutual dependence. And we find that most of our airlines, more especially small and medium-sized airlines, actually do not enjoy the substantial economies of scale because lack of merger, and obviously the size of airline itself in terms of capacity, aircrafts and all that, the fleet and all that. So they really don't enjoy that. And besides that, we find that they do not have mutual dependence between among themselves. And without that, it means that they cannot maintain constant prices or engage in various forms of non-pricing competition, such as advertising and customer service. That is to hold, if not to increase their market share. And that simply means that actually their market share will keep on shrinking, and most likely find that some of them may not actually survive the U-shaped crisis that has come with COVID-19. Now, the third point I need to share in relation to the future of African airline is airline financing. Actually, I need to say that COVID-19 has exposed the classical moral hazards of most airlines. Now, actually, it's airline norm that 25% of revenue should be kept unused during emergencies or emergency moments such as these on COVID-19. Unfortunately, most airlines believe they're too big to fail or to face such. And as a result, you find that most airlines do not adhere to the norm of 25% revenue to be kept aside for emergency. And that simply means that in times like this, survival of the global industry therefore depends on bailout, not only to keep airline afloat, but also for the wider travel and the leisure ecosystem. And such classical moral hazard problem actually is going to affect many airlines, including our top 10 airlines on the continent, such as Ethiopian Airline, Egypt Air, Royal Air, Morocco, Air Algeria, South African Airways, Kenya Airways, Tunis Air, Tassel Airlines, Air Mauritius, TAG Angola. These airlines actually are going to be affected. Most of them are going to be affected. And the question is that most of the countries willing to bail out some of these airlines will have two major questions on the table. And one of the questions they're most likely to have is if the airline fits in the category of too important to fail. And that simply means that if, for example, if an airline is a flag bearer of a country, that simply means that the country or the government might not actually let it fail. But that also puts in bad shape, more especially the airlines which are privately owned. The second question we shall be asking, obviously most governments are going to ask themselves, is whether the bailout is meant for solvency or a liquidity crisis. And what we mean by solvency bailout, this basically is given to airlines that are unlikely to ever remain financially viable if not bailed out. And actually more than 70% of African airlines are in this category. And obviously liquidity crisis bailout will be given to airlines that have high risk of running out of cash flow but should also be solvent soon if not bailed out. And in government, beyond considering if an airline is too important to fail and also the kind of bailout to be given, obviously assessment has to be done. A complex assessment will be required to determine the time it will take an airline to get back on its feet and resume flying more normally, among other assessments. And obviously this means that our government has huge task in ensuring that they're actually able to bail these airlines, leave alone a situation where actually the governments are not making money because taxes are not coming in. Many people are not working. We know what's happening and all stuff like that. So that also puts our airline industry in a very bad shape, and we may actually find many of those airlines actually not coming back post-COVID-19 or surviving for a very short time with a lot of challenges, but maybe they pick up as time goes by. Now, I also need to, in relation to the question, the future of African airlines post-COVID-19, I also need to look at open sky treaties. African airline industry remain firmly structured on bilateral system despite the launch of Open Skies Treaty in January 2018. Now, the bilateral system is based on a bundle of rules and restrictions, including airline ownership, national control, single airline citizenship, home-based requirement, and in bilateral system, the two countries enter bilateral trade treaties to determine the level of air access it's willing to give to the other partner, and that's what happens. And this is what's basically that's why you find that some airlines, for example, the new airlines such as Uganda Air might not be able to fly to other countries because they have not entered actually that bilateral trade treaties among other airlines in the continent. Now, this is unlike Open Skies Agreement, which eliminates government interference in commercial decisions of air carrier about the route, about capacity, about pricing, about freeing. This also includes freeing carriers to provide more affordable, convenient, and efficient air service to customers. Now, and we find that actually what makes most of the European airlines survive is because of multilateral air system. That's basically. But in Africa it's different. We're still in bilateral system despite the launch of Open Skies Treaty in 2018. Now, such structures in times like this pose a huge setback to the 46 African airlines in IOSA's registry. IOSA here it means IATA Operational Safety Audit. We have now, and this becomes even much worse to much smaller airlines because this kind of system actually locks airlines to single country or jurisdiction, and which means that most of our small airlines will have less international passenger and cargo flight because of because of bilateral system we have on the continent. I really hope and believe that very soon the Open Sky Treaty will be able to be effective, and we can have an open sky for all African airlines to fly wherever they want and stuff like that. Now, I also need to look at the last point I'm going to look at today is airline scheduling. Now, this is the art of designing system-wide flight pattern that provide optimum public service in both quantity and quality consistent with the financial health of the carrier. Now, schedules actually represent one of the primary products of an airline and certainly the leading factor in passengers' choice of a particular carrier. Now, COVID-19 may affect airline schedules in a way that will break actually some airlines, because some of the routes that have been viable for business may be cut off for a while based on traffic forecasting, pricing to make the cost of operating aircraft on that route, when actually we also have some airlines which have received bailout and they can charge less. Now, it's going to break some airlines because it might be very difficult in fleet planning in terms of which aircraft, depending on the fluctuating traffic on the route. Also, we find that financially it might not be viable, so we may have challenge financing some routes because actually they are not economically viable. So in actually discussing the question we have today, what is the future of African airlines post-COVID-19? Today I looked at 5 major points, and I looked at them and how possibly they're going to influence the future of African airlines post-COVID-19. And basically these are passenger load factor, oligopolistic market structure of airline financing, open skies treaties, and airline scheduling. These are the points obviously I've looked at today in discussing the future of African airline. I also need to say that next week, God willing, I'll be sharing on fleet planning, where I'll be focusing on fleet planning pre-deregulation era. I'll also be looking at the hub and spoke system. I'll also be looking at fleet rationalization. I'll also be looking at fleet commonality. These are the things I'll be sharing next time. And actually, if you don't want to miss out on this, I would want you to subscribe. If you're working in the airline industry, you're the CEO, you're the MD of an airline, you're in human resource, maybe you don't have much knowledge about aviation, I'll use this platform majorly to be able to share with you much a lot and help you understand how the airline operates and stuff like that. Okay. Also, on Friday next week, I'll be sharing with high school students on aviation scholarship program. I want you to stay tuned. by subscribing. Please make sure you click on this link, subscribe, and actually make sure you're the first one to watch the next video I'll post. For today, I need to say hasta la próxima. That's to say see you next time. Thank you very much for being part of this program, and see you next time.